Hi, this is Erling with Travel Trail Sail. We're out ready for a great weekend of camping, and at the start of it, one of the things we need to do is hook up our fresh water and our electricity. Now, depending on where you camp, if you're at a state park or a private campground, you're probably going to have at least electricity and fresh water, and you may even have full hookups. So that's great. You know, if you don't have those, you can fill a freshwater tank and run off the grid. But I'm going to walk you through the steps to, if you have access to water and electricity, how to get those connected. Now, every camper is a little bit different. Our water hookups happen to be in what's called a docking station inside this storage. Yours might just be on the side of the camper. But I think the steps are pretty much the same regardless of how it works. So what I'm going to do is open up my compartment here, and this universal docking station is where we hook up water, and also in a minute I'll show you cable TV, and that's in here as well. You can see I've already put a flexible hose connector on, and that helps, as with this one there's a hole in the floor of storage, and I need to run the hose through that. And in order for it to make the connection, it's just a lot easier to have one of those. And when you buy a water filter for your RV, you'll often get one of those thrown in with it as a package. So that's kind of what you're looking for. Freshwater hoses, that's what you need for this, is a freshwater hose, not a garden hose. They're usually white, sometimes other colors, but they'll definitely be marked freshwater hose. And ours happens to be light blue. This model is a little bit more flexible than a typical one, and so it also has some nice features like this spring that's on here and some heavier duty connections. For ours, again, we need to come up through the floor with this port. So I'm going to feed the hose in. Up through there. I'm going to connect it to this flexible mini hose. Make sure that's all snug, and then put the excess back out. Now, a couple of the things that we've learned along the way is, as much as you think this is secure, you really don't want water inside of storage. So, since we're in a campground, I have a red Solo cup. I'm just going to put that right underneath there to catch any drips. And in fact, I often put a rag down too, so that if you have any drips at all, they get caught before they cause any real damage. Now, since there is a port here, I'm not really comfortable having a hole in the floor with things being able to come and go. So I actually cut up a sponge. I cut it to the right size for this, and that just fits right around the hose to fill in that gap. So now it's all set and connected inside. You can see that there's a lever here that allows us to go to either fresh tank fill or city water. City water means that the water is going to be flowing to the bathrooms, the faucets, the kitchen, inside the camper. If I were to switch this to fresh tank fill, that would fill up the fresh tank, which would allow you to camp without connections to water. If you want, you can simplify your connections next time by adding a quick connect. This is a stainless steel quick connect, and with that you could end up making a faster connection with your hose. That's optional though. Either way, this is the basics of getting it set up on the camper side. Next, I'm going to hook it up to the water spigot. Now we're going to connect the water hose to the water faucet that is provided at a water hookup campsite. You might see that I actually have a few things in line before the hose, so let's talk through some of those. First off, you're not really sure what kind of water is going to come from this. It's usually pretty good, but it's always best to add an RV water filter. Even something as basic as this can catch a lot of grit before it enters your camper. The next thing I have is a Y valve. Now there's the ability to connect two hoses to it and independently turn them on and off. In a minute I'll show you why that can come in handy, but you can imagine putting a second hose on there for all kinds of reasons. I have a flexible adapter on here. in some cases you'll find that this is pretty low to the ground, and if you try and get up underneath it, it just won't fit. So having some way to flex is really handy. And then the other thing you'll want to keep in mind is you never know what the water pressure is coming out from here. And if you have too high a water pressure, you can actually end up damaging your plumbing. So you always want to start with a water pressure regulator as the first element. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and connect that now to water. Sometimes that can be a little bit tricky to get it started, but it looks like it's going on good today. Tighten that nice and snug. And I mentioned I do have this Y on here. I happen to have a second hose handy, so I'm going to go ahead and start attaching that. Now you're going to want to make sure this hose is a different color. You don't want it mixed up with your drinking water hose. So black, orange, green, anything would be a good choice, but something other than the white or blue of your drinking water hose. And we'll just go ahead and attach that as well. Make that one nice and snug too. And I'm going to flip it so that it's 90 degrees, which means no water will be flowing even when I turn this on. So in a moment I'm going to connect that to a black tank flush system, and I'll show you that next. I mentioned a second hose, and I connected that, and what I'm going to connect it to on the other end is this. It's a black tank flush. And what that means is after you've emptied out your black tanks, you can turn this hose on to spray water into them to clean them out and keep them fresher. So I'm going to open up that. We'll go ahead and get that connected. And then at the end of our weekend, when it's time to clear the tanks out, we'll have a way to flush them out. So if your camper has one of these, it is a really nice addition, and definitely something to look for when shopping for a camper. It's as simple as that. The next thing we're going to do in getting our camper ready for the weekend is to hook up power. So I'm holding a 50 amp electric cord, and our Grand Design has 50 amp hookups, which is why I've got this very heavy cable. You might have a camper with 30 amp electricity, and your electric cord may even fit in the wall of the camper, making it easy to store. Ours we coil up and put into a bin in storage. But it is 50 amp, so it can power quite a bit on this camper. And our outlet looks like this. It just marked, it's a Furrion 50 amp, and this is where we're going to connect it. And you can see on here that there is 3 slots, and on the side there's a silver metal piece. So when I open this up, and I can see here's my 3 prongs, and that's where the silver piece is going to connect. So I'm going to slide that in, and then it turns to latch. Well, there's a collar on here that will help make sure that it stays secure. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that collar. And now we're set up on this side. The next step will be to connect it to the power box. I'm going to connect our power cable to the power box. But before I do that, just really would encourage you to get some kind of a power management system or a surge protector. This one's from Progressive Industries. It's a pretty solid unit, and it'll actually test the power coming out of the box to make sure that it's wired correctly. Now you can never guarantee in a campground that you're going to have clean power, so a box like this can prevent real damage to your camper, to the electrical system. So our first step is going to be to plug into this box. And you can see there's a number of different connectors here, 50 amp, 30 amp, and 20. I've got the 50 amp here, and I'm going to plug that in. You can see I've got a lock around it. I'm just going to wind that around. There's no real good way to lock one of these, but something like this certainly can't hurt. Now, I'm going to turn the power on. Now I always turn the power on before I connect, because this again, it's going to go through a series of checks to make sure that the power coming out is clean. And what we're looking for is a symbol that'll say E0, meaning there are 0 errors found with it. So we'll give that a minute to make sure it's all connected. And we have E0. So we're in good shape, which means I can take our power cable and connect it. Now in the box I was showing you that there are 50 and 30 amp power. Sometimes you won't actually come with 50 amp power, in which case you'll need to find a dog bone or an adapter of some place. That would allow your 50 amp cable to connect into a 30 amp pedestal. And there we go. We are connected with 50 amp power. While I'm here at the box, I'm going to show you one more thing. That is, if you're at a full hookup campground, you might get cable TV. Now, if you're camping in a state park or off the grid somewhere, you can use the antenna on your camper. But if you have cable TV, might as well watch it. I mean, I love MeTV as much as the next person, but sometimes it's nice to have cable too. And so what I have here is a very long coax cable, and that will connect into the box. We'll just turn that on there. All right, and on the other end, we will connect that to, again, where I showed you where I was connecting water. The other end of this cable connects into that part of our universal docking station. So we'll move over there and connect that up. I've got the other end of our coax cable and I'm going to connect it. And I mentioned that in our universal docking station that it connects. Now if I was just going to connect that and try and close the door, it wouldn't work. So I'll have to come up through that same port where the water came up. We'll just move our handy sponge out of the way for a moment. And there comes the cable. Now inside here I actually have two connectors, one for cable, one for satellite. In this case we're connecting up to the cable. Twist that on there nice and tight, and then put our sponge back in the hole, and that holds both the hose as well as that coax cable. You may want to get a long coax. Again, you don't know how far away you'll be from the power pedestal where you're likely to hook up cable, so better to get a longer one and make sure you have the length. That's it. We're all connected. We've got water and electricity, cable TV, so we are set to go for a great weekend of camping. I hope that was helpful. If you have questions, feel free to check us out at traveltrailsail.com or on YouTube. Leave a question or a comment and we'll try and respond. And we do appreciate, of course, if you subscribe to our email as well as follow us on YouTube. So thanks, hope this was helpful, and hope you have a great time camping.